Hey guys, welcome to another Pilgrim car review. Today we have the Citroen e-C4X on review. So this is actually very similar to the e-C4 that we saw earlier on from Citroen. But interestingly, Citroen have actually listed this as a sedan and not an SUV. Although the e-C4X and the e-C4 are actually the same height. But regardless of that, it's a pretty cool looking car, extremely comfortable to drive. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. For today's review, we're gonna go check out its exterior, jump inside and check out its cabin, and of course take it for a drive to see how it fares in Singapore's roads. But before we do all that, if you're a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your used car for the best price possible or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through those links we'll be able to help you provide the best possible quote and valuation for your used car. In fact, if you need an insurance renewal quote for your car as well, you can also check out the other link, and these services are free to inquire. So do check out those links if you require those services. With that, let's go. Alright, so jumping straight into the review, this is the exterior of the e-C4X, and as you can see, it's a fairly unique looking car, nothing that looks quite like it on the market. I think at this price point, this is definitely one of the more styled cars you can find in this segment. So if you're looking for something a little bit different aesthetically at this price point, I think the Citroen e-C4X is definitely something that you can look at and consider, because it does set itself apart from the rest a little bit more. So taking a look around the car, this car runs on a standard wheel setup of 18-inch wheels. So these are 18-inch wheels, and I must say that when you do drive the car around, it does complement the suspension setup of the car very well. So overall, it's a very comfortable car. From the side profile, this is what you have, and I'm not sure whether you would call this a sedan. It is a little bit more jacked up than the average sedan, but it's not quite at the height of an SUV yet, in my opinion. So I'm not sure if this is a good or a bad thing actually, but like I said, you know, aesthetically this is a fairly unique car, so perhaps this also adds to the differentiating factor of the car. Over to the rear, you've got a fairly nicely styled rear end, nothing too aggressive, quite passive actually. Very clear, nice logos on the car, and the boot is actually fairly interesting. So here is the boot of the e-C4X. You've got a very nice squarish look to the boot. It's got very squarish dimensions. I think you should be able to fit a golf bag inside here. Let's see what's underneath. You got some storage for spare wheels maybe. So yeah, very competitively sized boot for its class. And then over to this angle, you got some very nice styled headlamps here. So if you have an opinion about the design of the e-C4X, please put them in the comment section below. I'm a little bit on the fence for this one, because I'm still a fan of a more clear-cut design. So regular sedans and regular SUVs are probably more up my alley. The in-between looks, I think, can be a little bit strange, but nonetheless, it does make getting in and out of the car a little bit easier, I guess. Speaking about getting in and out of the car, let's jump into the cabin and check out the inside of the e-C4X. Alright, so welcome to the cabin of the Citroen e-C4X. As you can see, it's got quite a unique set of styling. So nothing that you see here resembles anything that you see on any other cars, which I guess is a good thing. There's a sense of uniqueness about the cabin. Keep in mind though, this is quite an entry-level car, so what you do get, I would say the interior is actually still quite simple looking. There's quite a lot of black, not a lot of leather trim, so to speak, but everything does feel quite well put together, I must say. Everything feels tight, everything feels solid. There are no rattly sounds, which I think is a big positive. I think Citroen have put a lot of or put a little bit more thought into what goes into it rather than what it looks like. Strangely enough, because the exterior is actually quite nicely styled. But inside here, you do get a touchscreen infotainment unit here that's compatible with CarPlay and Android Auto. And then, of course, you've got some home buttons, car setting buttons. Your aircon controls are independent of the infotainment unit. So I think that's quite good because keeps things simple, keeps things clean. I'm trying to get the temperature lower. Is it cold? Is it cold? I think it's cold. Yeah, just trying to set the temperature here. It is a little bit warm outside, but in any case, further down the center console, you do get a wireless charging pad. I think that's quite useful. You got more storage spaces here. Down in the middle here, of course, you got your drive selector, your drive mode selector, and of course some cup holders. So everything that you need is here. In terms of the driver's side, you've got a digital driver's display. This is not a particularly large or sophisticated display, but it does show you everything that you need in a very clear manner. On top here, of course, you can see the new OBU unit. Nothing to do with Citroen, of course. This is to do with our LTA, but I'll keep my comments to myself for now about how good or bad this system is. In any case, steering wheel is an interesting one. You've got a nice sort of flat top, flat bottom steering wheel, very similar to what you find on a Peugeot. This one has this really large plastic panel at the bottom here that looks kind of cool, but it's kind of strange to have at the same time. I'm a bit used to more like a standard 3-spoke steering wheel. But on this steering wheel, you've got all your multi-function settings as well. So with all your drive assist, like earlier on when we were looking around the exterior, you probably saw a radar at the front grille. That's probably where your adaptive cruise control comes into play. So that's all for the interior. Fairly simple interior, I must say. Probably a little bit less aesthetically pleasing than its exterior, but like I pointed out, this car is quite an entry-level car, so to speak. And most importantly, I think Citroen have put their money or put their development cost into where it really matters, which is the right quality of this car, which is supposedly one of the best in class. So later on, when we take a drive in this car, we'll of course test that out. But for now, let's quickly jump into the back seat and check out how the rear passengers are going to feel. Alright, so jumping into the rear of the Citroen e-C4X, I am 175 meters tall. This driver's seat is in my regular driving position, and this is the amount of legroom that I have. So a fairly decent size, even for a full-size adult. Legroom is actually quite comfortable. Let me just raise the headrest here. So headroom wise, we've got a nice amount as well. And let me just see, is everything? Why are my lights on? Okay, my lights are off now. So yeah, a pretty decent amount of leg room. The hump on the floor is actually not too big. Not sure why there is even a hump, because this is a fully electric vehicle. But nonetheless, if you really do want to have 3 passengers in the back, it probably will not be too much of a hassle, because the hump is actually quite a manageable size. I'm actually mostly impressed with the headroom in the rear, because the e-C4X does have a sort of a sloping sportback kind of roofline, but despite having that, the interior headroom doesn't quite eat into your headspace too much. Headroom is also fairly reasonable, and it only starts sloping down quite far back, so nothing too jarring there. You've got ISOFIX points here as well in case you want to put in some child seats, so all that is really nice. With that, let's jump back into the driver's seat, take the car for a drive, and see how it performs on Singapore's roads. Alright, so I think it's about to rain soon. Yeah, so now we are back in the driver's seat of the Citroen e-C4X, and we're about to go take the car for a drive. But before we actually head off, let's go through some basic specifications about the car. So what is quite interesting about the e-C4X is that despite its fairly practical size, I mean it's not a tiny car, it's actually quite usable for even like a family car. The Citroen e-C4X only runs on a 54 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is actually fairly small. Something of this size, I would say typically would run about a 70 or 69 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I would say the 54 kilowatt battery pack is a little bit small for a car this size. But that said, the range hasn't seemed to be compromised too much. In fact, Citroen says that this will go about 400 over kilometers on a single charge, and I think that's also largely due to the fact that the car has been kept to a very reasonable weight of 1.5 tons. Typically, a car of this size, maybe about 1.8 tons, and typically it would be a little bit, it would require a larger battery pack to support this sort of range. But in the Citroen e-C4X, I'm glad to say that, small battery pack, decent range, all that points to is that the car is actually quite economical in the way that it consumes power. So I think that's actually a very positive thing for the car. And when you drive off in the car, actually immediately the steering wheel is actually calibrated to be quite light. You can feel the entire car actually feels quite nimble and light on its feet. So it doesn't have that typical electric car heft that you would find on most other electric models. But in any case, the e-C4X is good for 134 horsepower, which in Singapore means that it sits exactly at the cusp of being category A COE. So typically that will mean that your purchase price will be a little bit better because CAT A COE is obviously a little bit more affordable than CAT B COE at the present moment. So all this is to of course keep the price of the car lower, and I think that's a really good thing, because the Citroen e-C4X at its price point, I think is actually quite a reasonable value proposition. 134 horsepower. So aside from 134 horsepower, the e-C4X also produces about 270 Newton meters of torque. And that might not sound like a lot, especially coming from an electric vehicle, but I can tell you for a fact that 270 Newton meters is more than enough for most drivers in Singapore, and 270 Newton meters is definitely enough for this car to feel brisk. Very, very brisk actually. You would not even guess that this car is, it feels properly quick. It's not mind-bogglingly fast, but I would actually, if you're coming from something like an Altis or any other entry-level petrol power car, this is definitely going to feel a lot quicker than those cars. In fact, if you compare this car, the e-C4X, to any other sort of entry-level petrol power car, those entry-level petrol power cars will probably be producing anywhere between 200 to 250 Newton meters of torque, and sometimes even less for naturally aspirated setups. So 270, take my word for it, is more than enough. You don't have to be bothered about the 0 to 100 timing, because this is definitely quick enough for most people. For a daily commute, there is absolutely no way that this feels sluggish in any sense. So, there we have it. But aside from the e-C4X's light on its feet, very brisk nature, I think one of the key selling points about the e-C4X is the way that it handles itself on the road. So suspension setup is excellent for its price point. One of the best cars we've driven at this price point with this sort of suspension. So I'm going to give the lorries in front of me a little bit of a head start, because I want to go at a slightly higher speed across some of these humps that I have in front of me. So typically, these humps along the East Coast Parkway Service Road, I will probably go over them comfortably at about Anything lower than 40 kilometers per hour should be reasonable. But in the e-C4X, I can actually do it at a little bit of a faster speed. In fact, in most other cars, if I go over at above 40, the rear jumps a little bit, you get that boom sound. But in the e-C4X, we've got a fairly comfortable ride. So now I'm going over at about 45. Just kind of glides over, man. Of course, that was a fairly mild road hump. Let's see if we can get a bigger one here, a more pronounced one. And you know, as we are going over all these typical road undulations, the car is extremely comfortable as well. Okay, so we've got a bigger road hump here. I'm gonna come down to about 45. Yes, it did set off the dash cam, but I felt perfectly fine in the car. A little bit of a jumping sensation, but no clattering, no bottoming out of the car. Suspension held up just fine. And it is because of this that I think the e-C4X is a really, really interesting value proposition, because if comfort is your top priority, then this is a serious contender that you should definitely look at when you are choosing your car. I mean, it's got quite a nice combination for town driving, if I'm really being honest, because it's not so powerful that people are gonna get scared behind the wheel. I mean, I think we're still in the phase where a lot of people are not very used to the electric power, and if you throw them into something that produces like 300 Newton meters of torque or higher, it does feel a little bit overwhelming at times. So I think this is a really good stepping stone, or you know, if you're thinking about moving into the electric car space or electric vehicle space, this is your first electric vehicle, you're just looking for something entry level to run around town in, then you know, it might as well be something that's actually manageable in terms of power, affordable, because there is that absence of obscene amount of power, and then of course something that's really, really comfortable as well. And you know, earlier on I was chucking this car into some corners as well, and as much as this probably isn't a car that you should be doing too much of that of, I think the e-C4X held up actually really well. So suspension setup is, you know, good suspension setups aren't just comfortable over humps, they're also good in terms of controlling body roll. So if you look at this typical corner, you know, in another car that would feel a little bit more uncomfortable, but in the e-C4X, it's just like the body just kept really level. Body, like, road manners is really good, and so I think that would be the most impressive part of this drive. And look at the way I'm entering the expressway, it's just so brisk. It's actually quite a fun car to drive, if I'm being honest. Really pleasant. I mean, Citroen isn't exactly a brand that is known for its drivability, but I think the entire setup here, you know, the comfort, plus the way it handles body roll, plus the very brisk 270 Newton meters of torque that you can derive from such a small battery pack, not compromising the range too much as well. I think this is a lovely combination for Singapore roads that I think you should really consider. So, in any case, if you have any other questions about the Citroen e-C4X that I may not have addressed in this review, be sure to put those questions in the comment section below. We will definitely try to answer them if they are logical and they make sense. Things are getting a little bit busier on the channel, so I do apologize if I'm a little bit slower with replying your comments as compared to when the channel was brand new. We do have a lot more comments now coming through the channel. But in any case, if you found this review useful or helpful or enjoyable to watch in any way, shape or form, be sure to give this video a like, consider subscribing to the channel, because we've got brand new car reviews coming out every single week. In fact, upcoming, we have the very exciting BMW iX1, which I'm very excited to review, and then sometime later, we also have the W214 E-Class up for review. So do join us for those reviews as well. More subscribers means that we can get better cars, nicer cars, and we can get them earlier on in the cycle to produce these reviews for you. Before we go, if you are a driver in Singapore, just a gentle reminder, if you want to sell your used car for the best price possible, please be sure to check out the link in the description below, because through that link we'll be able to provide you the best possible quote and valuation for your used car. And if you are in need of a brand new insurance quote for this year as well for your vehicle, check out the other link. We can help you with those as well. Inquiries are free, so please reach out to us if you need some help. If not, as usual, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.